No, I was looking ahead.
You gotta watch this. I'll look it up.
Right, because it's
Will the Senate please come to order? We will have a moment of silence in lieu of a devotional. Thank you. Are there any announcements? Orders of the day. We are passing over H 463. Is that so? We have for third reading S 124, an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Listen to the third reading of the bill.
S 124, an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have passed S 124. We now have H 398, an act relating to the Vermont Economic Development Authority, passed the House March 20th, 2025, and was referred to the Committee on Finance, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that it ought to pass, affecting the appropriations of the state. The bill was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports that the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 398, an act relating to the Vermont Economic Development Authority.
I recognize the senator from Chittenden, Senator Chittenton, for the report of the Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. H 398, an act relating to the Vermont Economic Development Authority. The bill proposes numerous changes and technical updates to laws pertaining to the VEDA. This bill also establishes a Vermont Disaster Recovery Loan Fund to enable VEDA to provide loans and other forms of financial assistance to business and agricultural enterprises after disasters. So this is my 5th year doing this, and one thing it also does is we have in statute right now reference to a memo from Howard Dean. And so what it also does is takes this memo, which exists just out there in the ether, so to speak, and codifies it into language. Never seen that before, so I think that's good practice. I'm glad we're cleaning that up. But allow me to walk through these sections of the bill, if I may, Mr. President.
You may.
So section 1 is really definitions. It expands the definition of eligible facility to be, or eligible project to include endeavors related to capital improvements. And that also includes the purchase of revenue streams and other insurance programs, which is pretty common practice today. VEDA was established 40 years or so ago, which was focused more on just property, but increasingly with economic development, there are revenue streams as well as other types of investment vehicles that are often parts of these arrangements. It no longer requires that facilities or projects be tied to the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Strategy, but instead codifies a lot of that in statute, as I'll speak about in the coming section. It also removes numerous definitions that are no longer necessary as they reference to a subchapter that was repealed back in 2016. It also, among technical amendments, it allows the authority to elect officers from among its members and removes the requirement that the governor approve its executive director's compensation, which is consistent with other state entities. They have an appointed board, which I'll also be speaking about as well. Includes numerous technical amendments for drafting style to remove references to previously repealed sections. It removes the requirement for the executive director of the authority to make a recommendation on every proposed project and for the executive director to review and approve every loan and disbursement. Instead, it allows review and approval based on authorities' approved policies and procedures. It also removes the requirement that any nonprofit created by the authority must have 14 additional members to the 15 members of the authority, which would lead, if it was actually employed, lead to boards of 29 people under current law. So this again just codifies current practice. It also extends the duration of loans for local development corporations from 10 to 20 years. It also allows for bonds to be signed electronically. That's the technical amendments portion. It also amends language to reflect that the projects under this section are under the name of the authority, Vermont Economic Development Authority, and not the state of Vermont, to just make clear that distinction. You'll see a lot of that through a variety of sections. Allows authorized representatives of the authority to sign for bonds, removes redundant language, and instead references back to previous sections where the language can be found that requires certain findings of the authority prior to issuing bonds. It also authorizes the authority to pledge security, to enter into security insurance and other forms of credit enhancement, and to purchase its own bonds. It also shields members and staff of the authority from personal liability for bonds or contracts unless due to intentional misconduct. I'm now on, if you're following along, still within section 1, but on subchapter 261 to 264, direct loans. The changes in these 4 sections all remove reference to the term mortgage and instead expands the powers of the authority to offer secured loans instead of limiting just to mortgage loans, which has a legal context of property, of buildings or land. Secured loans can also be done with holdings, equipment, inventory, and so on. So that just is, again, more consistent with common practice within the Economic Development Authority. Subchapters 279C makes a technical amendment to clarify where excess revenues are deposited under the Vermont Export Finance Program. Excess revenues must be deposited into the Vermont Jobs Fund, the primary fund utilized by the authority. Doesn't change policy, just better clarifies and codifies that. 280A and 280B is really the memo I was talking about, which is really kind of interesting. So this just changes technical amendments and specifies new financing program, any new financing programming created by the authority that is not already authorized in statute must meet the criteria in this memo, which is codified in statute now, and we no longer need to dig this up out of our old files. It also removes the requirement that the governor develop a sustainable job strategy, because that doesn't necessarily need to be done now that we're codifying what we are already currently using. 280GG, Disaster Recovery Loan Fund. This creates a new revolving loan fund to provide new interest loans and financial assistance to businesses and agricultural enterprises after disasters. It requires the authority to consult with the secretaries of ACCD and Agriculture on whether the funds may be made available after a disaster unless the disaster is declared by the governor or the president. It also limits interest rates necessary to cover the cost of administering this fund. I will speak to that fund from the fiscal note. As introduced, so the Disaster Recovery Loan Fund proposed in this bill would provide financial assistance through a revolving loan fund at a limited interest rate necessary to cover the cost of administering the loan fund. Any excess revenues shall be deposited into the fund. As introduced, the bill would appropriate $2 million in fiscal year 2025 from the general fund to the Department of Economic Development for a grant to VEDA to establish the Disaster Relief Fund for use by businesses and agricultural enterprises following a natural disaster. The note I was looking for here is that this disaster recovery loan is expected to be funded through a $2 million transfer from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development using unspent BGAP, or Business Emergency Gap Assistance Programs funds, which were used during the last 2 floods, but my colleague from Senate Appropriations might elaborate on that point. The last section has to do with, section 2 has to do with redesignation, just redesignates that section 22A and makes technical amendments. The section deals with the Vermont Jobs Fund, which is the primary fund for the authority to manage finances, and it is more properly located in the general provisions of this chapter. Section 3 is the effective date. Your Senate Finance Committee heard from Cassie Polimis, the Chief Executive Officer of the Vermont Economic Development Authority, Chris Roop, the Associate Fiscal Officer of Joint Fiscal Office, Cameron Wood, Legislative Counsel, and your Committee on Finance voted 7-0-0 in support of advancing this bill as it came to us from the House, and we encourage the Senate to do the same. I'd also just say, this is my third bill this session, and the last two I've had a floor amendment on bills, and I want to keep up the track record. So I'll be coming back at third reading with a floor amendment, very small tweaks, but you'll hear from me again on Tuesday on this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
I now recognize the senator from Lamoille, Senator Westman, for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
The Committee on Appropriations took a look at this bill. The bill doesn't carry funds itself. The House removed the appropriations from the bill because the appropriation is reflected in the 2026 Appropriation Act. The program, as it was indicated before, is funded by $2 million from the $7 million appropriated to the Business Emergency Gap Assistance Program of fiscal 2025. The Appropriations Committee approved this 7-0-0.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Senator from Wyndham.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter of the bill, please?
Reporter of the bill is interrogated.
Thank you. Is there, I see in pages 26 and 27, there are various foci that economic development can be used for, and I'm wondering if there is anything in this bill or possibly in other areas of VITA that it could include things necessary for employment to effectively occur, such as transit and transportation access.
So you'd want to, I might need to get back to you at third reading for specificity. I could do that, or we could take a short recess. Would you be comfortable if I got an answer for that for third reading? Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to have a little conversation to explain as part of your process.
Right now, Mr. President?
No,
No.
no, sorry. I just,
Senator, would you be fine with speaking before third reading with the senator from Chittenden?
very much so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I might ask a question of the presenter.
The presenter is interrogated.
Two questions, actually. So I think my first one has been answered. The money for the Disaster Recovery Loan Fund, as I understand it, will come from unspent BGAP funds, Mr. President?
That is my understanding, Mr. President. I would look to my colleague from Senate Appropriations to correct me if that is incorrect.
And I'm wondering, is the thought that because this is a revolving loan fund, but it may take some time for funds to come back to the fund once they're allocated, is there a thought that this might need to have additional funding in the coming year?
I don't recall testimony or questions to that regard. If anything, I would interpret this as the BGAP, if I recall correctly, was funded in light of the 2023 and 24 floods, that if anything, this sadly structures in place a revolving loan fund to address future flooding concerns.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. And then my last question is on page 31. I'm wondering if page 31, subsection 2, it says that the authority shall consult with the Secretary of Commerce and Community Development and the Secretary of Agriculture in determining whether funds shall be made available following a disaster event. A consultation shall not be required in the event of a disaster declaration declared by the governor or the president. This seems to contemplate that the authority itself could designate disasters that were not designated by the governor or the president. Is that so, Mr. President?
I would interpret that from the plain reading of this language, Mr. President, that should an event occur that was be deemed a disaster of sorts at some level, but maybe not meeting the threshold of the governor or the president, to open up the conversation about using these funds with those consultations.
And that's I guess my concern, Mr. President. I can't remember another instance in which we give someone other than the governor or the president the ability to declare a disaster and begin giving out state funds. Can I ask the senator what the discussion was like around that delegation of authority?
I hope I'm not failing my committee, Mr. President, but I don't recall any discussion on that point. But as there will be more discussion at third reading, I'd be happy to clarify that with looking for other context for if this is commonplace in other scenarios, or possibly considering a revision to this language before third reading.
I thank the senator. I would appreciate just a little bit of extra oversight there. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Lamoille,
If I might read from the fiscal note on this.
please.
The first question that was asked by the member from Chittenden was about recapitalization of the fund. In the fiscal note from joint fiscal, it is possible that future demands on funds could require additional capitalization in future years beyond the initial 2 million appropriations.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S 34398. That completes the orders of the day. Are there any announcements? Senator from Windsor.
Thank you. May I speak briefly on a point of personal privilege?
You may.
Thank you. As we do our work in this building, one of the things your Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs Committee has been working on are addressing the incredibly damaging and short-sighted tariffs which our federal government is imposing on our economy. And my great frustration at the moment is that we are impairing our personal, our familial, our cultural, and our economic bonds with a country we hold dear and treasure, Canada. This is our #1 trading partner. I am reminded today of my incredible frustration with this situation because we are reviewing the work in the Senate resolution, which was introduced a week or two ago, which will be coming back and will be read both in English and in French, we're hoping, either next week or the week after. But we are working and honing the work of this resolution. And I am just reminded that this is one of the pieces of what's happening in Washington at the moment that we will all be feeling in significant and profound ways. This has impact on our economy and incredibly much on our housing. We had the lumber dealers in yesterday, and this is who are also feeling it, and how all our housing partners are feeling it. Our dollars will go a lot less far as a result of this, and our families are torn apart by it. Our relationships, our business relationships are torn apart by it, and it's having such profound impact on all of us in so many different ways. And I just have to register my outrage at this situation that we have been put in. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet at 1 o'clock today.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, Senate Appropriation will also meet at 1.
Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. As will Government Operations.
Senator from Wyndham.
Thank you. Senate institutions will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Bennington.
Senate Education will meet at 1 today.
Are there any further announcements? Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. In that case, I would move that the Senate stand in adjournment until 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, April 22nd.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the senator from Chittenden is moved that the Senate stand in adjournment until 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we'll stand in adjournment till 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025.